Oh my god, the audio seems okay, and it is currently March 3rd, 2010, and this is Day 9 Daily number 81. Getting so close to 100 makes me so happy. I'm going to drink a little celebratory water. I'm not answering that number. Well, look at me. People just want to get a hold of me right at the start of the cast, closing that window. That program is gone. I'm excited to be here today. You'll note that I've had quite a bit of work, and you can always tell when I have a lot of work because I haven't shaved. I'm getting increasingly furry over time. You know, God gives many gifts to people, sometimes the gift of beauty, sometimes the gift of great elegance, but for me, he just gave me hair and Starcraft knowledge, really, which is a pretty good deal. It's pretty good. I'm fairly pleased with it because I can just talk about Starcraft on this stream and look furry and adorable. So yesterday there was a little bit of a that kind of happened. My stream exploded, and a lot of people on the live stream forums initially thought there was a hacker bouncing around to many different channels because it didn't seem to be happening simultaneously to any channels. It seemed to be happening to one channel at a time. And all of them were Starcraft related. And what looked like it was happening is that the viewer stream was bumping up to like the thousands at some sudden pace, which caused the streams to crash. I'm starting to think that that's not actually the case, that there was just some server error on live stream side, which is actually good, first of all, because they have really good customer service and they get on stuff really fast, but also because it would be awful if there was some hacker out there who just was raging at StarCraft, perhaps a WoW player or a Dota player, and a bunch of his buddies are going to be leaving to play the new sweet kick-ass strategy game, StarCraft 2. But either way, hopefully it's resolved now, so I'm going to go ahead and cast. Today we're going to be looking at some games from CowGoMoo, which he's a player who's really phenomenal Terran player. I have a whole bunch of his games ready to go. This is from his replay pack that you can find on TeamLiquid.net. So I have to make sure there's no pizza in my beard. I had a whole pizza before the cast, because I was super hungry, because like I said, I'm a very large, very hairy man, so I have to get my sort of sustenance. So we're going to be looking at CowGoMoo's games, and he has this phenomenal record. He's like 120 and 10 or something like that on the ladder, like well over 90% win rate. All his games are with Terran, and he's super, super solid, which is why I really was looking forward to playing his games. A lot of the people who we see in games nowadays are very gimmicky. Everything will evolve around just sort of praying the opponent isn't prepared. So we see a lot of Mulisks in Zerg vs. Protoss, and the Protoss player simply will have no anti-air at all, like zero anti-air, like a Zealot Colossus army, and he'll see the Mulisk and go, ugh, imbalance, and then he'll leave the game crying. And I'm not the biggest fan of the person who goes Mutilus in that circumstance, because there's no finesse involved, there's no skill, there's nothing like, ooh, awesome about it. But what's so cool about watching CowGoMoo play is that he's very good about not missing supply depots. Overall, his strategy, he does a lot of cool transitions, so we're going to be looking at it. And for any of you who didn't already know this, CowGoMoo is actually a Blizzard employee working in Q&A. And I don't know if he's working StarCraft Q&A, but I just hope he's not working WoW Q&A, because he seems like a StarCraft player, and unless you really like WoW, I wouldn't do the QA for WoW, because from what I understand, it's basically like being a heroin tester at a heroin factory, and all the other people are heroin addicts, so all the other testers are just like, woo, like having the time of their lives, like, all right, baby, time to do some work, and you're just sitting there like, all right, let's do some heroin, okay, and it makes it really hard to connect to the people too, because you're like, hey guys, you want to go get some lunch? Want to go get some food somewhere? And they're like, nah, I think I'm just going to stay here and keep doing heroin. So it's good that we have a nice StarCraft player from Blizzard who seems to be having played a lot of StarCraft and has those good fundamentals nailed down. First game we're going to be looking at is a Terran vs. Protoss that he plays against Louder. This game. Oh, awesome. I watched several of these last night. They're doing the good old good luck, have fun action. Louder, as you know, is the famous American player who recently participated in the MLG show match. He's been playing like an absolute monster as of late, like over 200 games in the first few days of StarCraft 2 beta. Getting his pylon out. Was that at 10? See, this is the sort of things that I want to be very curious about. It does look like he got a pylon on 10, so I'm curious about this. I have a lot of interest already. So CowGoMoo's going to be doing some pretty normal stuff. Oops, hit the wrong buttons. So here we are, we have CowGoMoo, and oh my goodness, look, we're 4 minutes into the cast and already have 1,000 viewers, so thanks so much everyone for tuning in, and thanks for the on-demand people who are my good old fine friends out in Europe who are tuning in probably at a later point in time, or people in America who actually go to their classes or something for school. Screw that, man. Watch the Day 9 Daily. Yeah! Alright, so we have some cool stuff going down, a barracks going down early, a refinery. It's important to try to be establishing timings already if you're in the beta, or even if you're watching the stream to sort of notice things. So for instance here, we're going to notice that this barracks was built, and then there was a gap of time and the refinery was built. And what we're going to see is that this barracks won't have won't have 50 gas to make a tech lab right when this refinery finishes. You need to make the barracks and the refinery at about the same time in order to have enough gas for a tech lab. So if any of you are trying to Reaper rush, that's a great way to get Reapers really quickly. So already, I want to say, if you are going Reaper rush in CowGoMoo's position, this isn't the best build for it. I'm not the biggest fan of it. However, as we're going to see, he's not doing that. He's going to make a Marine. Sorry, let me go ahead and get a pillow. I had to scoot away for a second and get a pillow because, as you may or may not know, Day 9 suffers from carpal tunnel because I'm on my computer all the time. Surprise, surprise. And getting the very early orbital command. So, I'm such a fan of CowGoMoo's play. Continuing to get Marines. Did you see that? Right as this Marine finished, the next one began, and not a second earlier. That is one of the most important things of all of strategy games where you can queue stuff. You just shouldn't queue stuff, you know? I mean, I know that you can, and there are circumstances, there are corner cases where it's good to queue, but I want all of you to just avoid queuing at all costs. Because two things will happen. First of all, you'll start going, oh, Jesus, I really need to focus on macroing a lot better. Because you'll have to go back and you'll have to make it right when the unit finishes, if you have this restriction on yourself. And if something dumb happens, like you forget to macro, because you're trying not to queue, but you're forgetting to start again, you get punished really hard for that, right? So that's really good. The punishment's really hard, so you're forcing yourself to get better. But the second, and I think the way more important thing, is that if you're not queuing, and you're macroing really well, suddenly you start to see things you didn't see before. You start going, oh, I have 400 minerals here, and I didn't think I could get 400 minerals here. Can I get away with expanding right now? That actually happened to me in Starcraft 1 with my absolute favorite way to play Zerg vs. Protoss. I was playing, and I started being very careful with how and when I made my larva, and suddenly I was going, I have 250 minerals for a really long time. Can I sneak a fourth expansion super early? And I could, and it was so fun. And so that's the sort of stuff that, with that extra money, without sacrificing any optimality, without missing any Marines or anything like that, you can discover all sorts of cool fancy junk. So there he is shooting the Marine. It's obviously good to shoot the Marine. Go ahead, shoot the Marine, shoot the Marine. Yeah, go Marines, taking them down. So killing off a scout very early on. So what am I already noticing? It's good to get an early orbital command as well as early Marines, because you can kill off an early scout without revealing if you're going for factory, without revealing if you're going for another barracks, all thanks to getting that orbital command early on. I'm devoting my early resources to something which can only be beneficial, so I have the opportunity to keep my opponent in the dark. So Ladder is teching up to Dark Templar, as we're going to see in this game. And there's another timing that's coming up here that I really liked quite a bit, that we're going to be focusing on, if I can remember where he placed the building, because once again I watched like so many of his games, because CowGoMoo just inspired me. I like hadn't slept in forever, and I was like, I'll take a break and just watch one replay and go to bed, and I watched like 40 of them. So we still have CowGoMoo making a lot of Marines right here. Tech lab going down. There should be a ghost lab getting built here, or maybe it isn't this game. Sure hope it is. There's the Ghost Academy. Or Ghost Lab, as I call it. There was actually another game where he made this Ghost Academy so that this barracks tech lab finished right at the same time as this Ghost Academy. A question could be, why not build a Marauder first and then get the Ghost Academy? Well, anytime you're getting a spellcaster as part of your unit composition, this applies to Protoss, who's going for Zealot, Sentry, Stalker. This applies to Terran, who's getting Ghost. Applies to Zerg, who's trying to get Infestors or anything like that. If it's part of your composition at all, figure out a way to get it first, or as early as possible, because then it'll build up a whole bunch of energy early on. You know, we're not going to be doing any attacking early on with this Ghost, but really important to just go ahead and get it very, very, very early. Still making Marines. Now, if I'm CowGoMoo, if I'm trying this build, my question is, and what I'll have my friend Tristan do against me is, Tristan, rush me a bunch of times. I'm going to see if I can hold you off just making one barracks marine and walling in. And I even like this formation because you'll note that it lets my marines be very, very, very close to the ramp. So for instance, if I had supply depot, barracks here, and then another supply depot, which is a pretty common wall off, I could have some marines on the top and some marines on the bottom. This is an issue because if he kills off the marines on the right side, or excuse me, if he moves too far to the right, he can kill off the marines on the right side without the marines on the top being able to fire. However, with this wall in, he can just pile all of his marines up on one side. So I'm into that. I'm digging it. Yeah, so there's one early marauder. We're going to see him go ahead and be getting a ghost earlier on. Now here's some cute stuff that Louder's doing. He's building pylons right here, just so we can get his DT rush going there a little bit faster. Here's his Dark Shrine building. He's almost done with the warp gates. This is great. I like any strategy that involves some timing attack with Protoss, allowing you to get warp gates early so you can warp in whatever unit that you want to get fancy with. And by the way, I don't know if anyone else has seen this. This is like my favorite thing in all Starcraft. This little ball here, it spins. Yeah, I'm easy to please, baby. And then double gateway, which I'm unsure about, and I'll come back to that in a little bit. So we have this nice little composition, getting an engineering bay early. What am I noticing about the timing? The engineering bay, which lets us get detection for turrets, is right at about the time when our opponent's Dark Shrine finishes. Ooh, look at that good timing, like fancy timing. We're also letting the orbital command's energy build up. Whether that's intentional or not, I don't think really matters. What's important to note is that it looks like a pretty good time to be getting those. And as we're going to see, there was the scan, killing them off, no problem. Fantastic. And what I loved so much about this orbital command energy save up thing is that it's some of the stuff that was discussed. Man, you can kind of see how I love merging my words, right? Some of the stuff that was discussed earlier about, especially in the TeamLiquid.net first podcast about StarCraft 2, hosted by me and Mantra, because you have Scan, the Mule, and this extra supply boost, you need to be careful about managing that. So for instance, there was a time where it was saved up just so we could have enough detection to hold off some sort of early DT harassment. Very fancy. And at this point I was a little bit, because Louder got all these warp gates and got a robotics facility and then expanded, right? These two gateways, I'm starting to think, were not of particularly large use. They didn't really have that much utility here. So I'm kind of thinking, you know, I'm not the biggest fan. Look, I'm clicking on them. We're noticing that only one has made stuff recently. Okay, now it looks like two. Yeah, still only 3 units. Yeah, in the Sentry now. Yeah, now we have some stuff being warped in, but took a little bit of time. And the early robotics facility to likely get an observer to just scout things around. Very typical StarCraft stuff's going on. And getting the early +1 upgrade. You're starting to see how smoothly this build integrates into itself. You know, we're getting this early orbital command, so that way we can have our Marines kill stuff off without revealing anything. Then we get this tech lab and get a ghost really early on, so that way we can deal with any sort of threats at the front. Still constantly making Marines. We get a engineering bay, not just for detection, but also for a +1 infantry upgrade. And we have already been making a lot of infantry. And we're getting yet another barracks after this expansion. A very sort of gentle progression towards an expansion. A question I have is, why have one barracks build early on, just regular Marines one at a time, when you could get a reactor and build 2 at a time? And I think the answer lies in when you want to be able to defend stuff and when you want to be able to attack stuff. Because part of it is that if you're getting Marines slowly one at a time, you're pretty much always defended from any threat that would come to your ramp. And if you start getting Marines 2 at a time, one of 2 things happen. The bad case is that you've over-defended, and you don't need all these Marines, and then all of a sudden you're really low on money. Ugh. Or the second case is you're trying to do a timing attack, because again, it takes a lot of money to be building constantly out of that reactor. So you need to make sure that you are both, or if you don't need it for defense, and you're not going to be doing any timing attack, I don't see any reason to be getting the reactor super early. You know, it saves a little bit of money. No, Peter G. Miller, I in fact would not like to message you. Let's go ahead and exit this. I need to go ahead and close all my chat programs. Oh man, that happens every time I close AIM. Whoopsie doopsie daisies. Let's go ahead and rewind just a little toochy tooch here. You know, I really hope Peter G. Miller wasn't telling me that my stream had crashed, because that would be unfortunate. Yeah, you notice right here, look at the ghost. They use that EMP just to repel that little guy running around here, little Dark Templar. And of course we're getting some bunkers and some missile turrets. This is something that's curious. Why 2 bunkers? I don't know. Almost certainly CowGoMoo knows something that I don't. Because again, he's a QA tester, and unless he's a heroin addict along with the other WoW players, he probably has been QAing Starcraft too. So he's probably encountered some sort of early busting. But still, I think it's important in any case to go, do I really need this defense? Because as we see here, he has quite a bit of Marine Ghost Marauder and a pretty reasonable army out here by Louder. 64 food by Louder and 55 food from Terran. And now going back and making Marauders. You see how he did that? That's so great, getting 2 ghosts really early on. Notice how much energy this ghost has, even after it's ended up using an ability. Actually, this was the one that used the ability. And going back to get these Marauders. It's just, again, this is something I talk a lot about, which is rearranging the order of what you want to do. If you want a Ghost Marauder Marine combination, that's great. Make sure you have an order that's appropriate. There are some variations. Let's just think about just those 3 units. Just the 3 units. Marine, Marauder, Ghost. That's a composition that I want as Terran. And as we'll actually see today, it's really, really good in almost all situations. With that combination, what are some things we could do? We could do exactly what CowGoMoo did, go 2 barracks early on, making Marines out of 1, rush for Ghosts, and then come back and make some Marauders. Or I could go 1 barracks Marine and early expand, and then do the exact same thing that he did here, that CowGoMoo did here. Or he could get 1 barracks really quickly and do some sort of Reaper harass early on, and then make a ton of Marauders out of that first one, and then get the second barracks to make Marines out of it, and then get the Ghost Academy. We're rearranging these things, but as you've heard the description, one was this game, the second one was an early expand, and the third one was a harass-intensive Reaper thing that got a lot of Marauders first. Those already have different feels, and I'm still only talking about just 3 units, right? So what I love about the description of all the ways to use this basic unit combination is that it allows you to experiment with early game openings while not experimenting with mid games. It allows you to get longer term practice and fiddle around with a whole bunch of crazy shit at the outset. Isn't that neat? Thinking of ways to cause the mid game to converge to some standard, and then having all our other plays dump towards that. Or pour into that. Get your opening juice to sort of, go into this combination. And look, getting everything behind the bunker. Look how solid this is. Having things up the ramp. We have 1 ghost on top of the ramp, 1 ghost below the ramp. This is the stuff that really turns me on, right? Not like, oh my god, look, he has 9 colossi, herp-de-dur, that anyone can make 9 colossi. Hell, I can make 9 colossi. But it's very easy to forget about little things like positioning your ghost properly. Yeah, CowGoMoo, I appreciate you. By the way, please send this to your superiors and give me a job at Blizzard if that's cool with you. So anyways, we have some Immortals coming out right now. One thing that I've actually been thinking about quite a lot to know real success is how to get a really good unit composition for Protoss against Terran. I mean, Marine Marauder Ghost is great. I mean, super solid. You can go it all game long, as we're going to see here. But I don't know what's so good here. It's so easily for me to mentally force myself out of whatever strategy I'm doing. So the way I'm combating that is I'm picking 1 composition at a time and playing it a lot and seeing how that turns out. Is this the best one? I don't know, but I'm going to go ground Immortal, right? I'm going to go gateway units and Immortals, and I'm just going to see how that turns out and test that a little bit. And then I'll come back and try to do things like Colossi. So we see the Protoss is expanding placing his pylons around quite a bit. Dark Templar at the front, excellent move by Louder. Just making sure that he can have a little bit of extra knowledge of anything that's coming out. Still just making Marines and Ghosts. And hey, as we're noticing right now, for the first time we have some reactors coming out. This barracks and this barracks didn't have a reactor for an incredibly long time. It was just focused on getting this expansion up and having a very slow, gentle defense. Again, we don't really need a reactor unless we desperately need to defend against something or we desperately need to go kill him. Because again, it takes a lot of money to do that. But now we're adding on. Okay, cool. So in CowGo's Milk Mind, CowGo's Milk Mind? Alright. CowGoMoo's mind, he has considered that he has a strong enough economy. He's happy with that. And now it's time to really start barreling him down with some sort of mid-game push. And see, here's some very clever stuff going on. The factory makes the reactor, and then the starport lands at the reactor. We're going to see him get a medevac and I believe a Viking as well. Cool little transition, and he's just going to move out with his factory. No real need for this factory at any point. We can listen to the soothing sound as it passes across the valley. That is pretty much my favorite map, just because it's hyper close and it happens, you know, to poop out all these ridiculous seeming games where people are like building stuff right next to each other and attacking nonstop. So here we go. We're getting a Colossus for the first time. A lot of people, I think, have been Colossus rushing in this matchup. I don't necessarily know if that's the best thing so much. The only reason you would really want to get Colossi really fast, again, is if you are trying to kill him off really quickly, if you need it to defend against something, or if you want to start building them up because you want to hit like a critical number of them eventually. Just as an example of that, my friend Tristan and I were playing around with this, basically going gateway straight into robotics facility and doing some sort of immortal rush. But what we found is that we were having trouble dealing with early Marine Marauder pushes. So in that circumstance, I actually rushed for a Colossus, and I've been able to hold off the Marine Marauder pushes that my friend Tristan has thrown against me. I mean, we can obviously always try to find variations of it from other people. But, you know, that's just an example of what I'm talking about. So look at this great placement, walling himself off a little bit, you know, kind of forcing things to be a little crunched down. We now have 3 ghosts. By 3, I meant 5. And that's going to turn out to be pretty cool. Not a lot of Marauders, and we've seen a lot of players mass up on the Marauders, primarily Marines. Notice they do have stim. They also have the combat shield upgrade, so they have that plus 10 life. And you know what I just saw? Infantry armor just finished out of this engineering bay, and we're going to see him attack a lot, not a lot longer than now. Yeah, there it is. Okay, I'm actually going to rewind that just so everyone sees that in action. Yeah, look, here is the engineering bay upgrade. By the way, that's really awesome by Blizzard. I rewound it, and I had selected the engineering bay in the future, and it still had it selected in the past. Ooh, as a coder, I appreciate that. So yeah, look, it's about to finish, and badingo, the flam, getting the upgrade, and then what does he do? He just moves out. I want you to note right now, I think this is very important. This Viking is going to help some. This medevac is going to help some, but for the most part, it's an almost entirely Marine army with 5 ghosts and about 5 Marauders. A lot of people are going to mess up the timing of this attack because there's nothing particularly noteworthy about it. And that's really when the most brilliant timing attacks occur, is when there doesn't really seem to be any big signal. The player just moves out. In this case, you know, there's also the +1/+1 attack. You know, the armor just finished, so that's great. But the question is, why did Terran plan for the +1 armor to finish right then? This is what's going to take the longest time in StarCraft 2 to figure out, is when these good timing pushes occur. Let's take Terran vs. Protoss in StarCraft 1 as an example of this. So I early expand as Terran. I start off with a 1 factory early expand. I get the 2nd factory, and I'm making some tanks, and, you know, just doing some general defensive play. And then suddenly I add on 4 factories, and I start getting a bunch of vultures. Right when all those factories finish, when is the best time for me to push as the Terran player? I don't want to push out immediately, because then I have only tanks, and I have no vultures. Zealots are going to crush me. Even, you know, some Dragoons and a shuttle with Zealots, and that's it. That'll still crush that pretty badly. But once you get that good timing of, okay, now I have about 4 Zealots in my 4 vultures. My next batch is about to pop out. Let me move out, so I'm going to have about 8 when I move out. Nothing really else is going on with Terran. It's just this number of units seems to work out well. If you actually waited until you had 16 or 20 vultures, until you waited 5 production cycles, the Protoss actually wouldn't quite have a problem dealing with that. But the fact you're moving out right at this critical time that doesn't really have any big signals for Terran of why to move out, that takes a while. It actually relies on you figuring out his timing, the Protoss's timing, not so much your own timing. So that's what I think is really clever about this push-out timing, is that it's pretty much just Marine, Ghost, Marauder, and I'm trying to think of what are all the possible things that could have motivated it. So here's one. I'm going to count some units, right? He has 24. He almost has, it looks like, say, 60 Marines. Just 4 Marauders, almost no Marauders in here, and there's some Ghosts, if I can manage to click on it. Yeah, 5 Ghosts. I mean, this Medevac and Viking did just finish, but again, it doesn't seem like the grandest influence on everything. So I'm starting to think back to this Protoss player. Although I've never really seen Protoss players play like Ladder, because to be honest, I don't claim to have played a billion games of StarCraft 2 and seen all the different possible styles. This is a possible style that I'm noting. But right now, it seems like Protoss has only just gotten his expansions up. Look, 1475 right here. And this one is at about 1276. This one has only been done a little bit, and this one actually just got done. So right now is the first time where Protoss has had all his expansions up and can't cancel them, but still has not gotten the opportunity to exploit all this money. Has only mined just a little bit from this. And, you know, these pylons not only were good for warp gates early on, but also for doing little spotteroo things going on right now. So we have the one medevac who's like, don't worry, I got this whole army covered, I'm going to heal it. Awesome little thing. This never occurred to me that if you push this direction, you get the Zelnaga Watchtower. In other words, the aggressor has the advantage because he can see everything. The defender, in this case Louder, cannot. So let's go ahead and slow this battle down to slowest. Looks like a pretty good fight that's going to happen here, but look what we're going to see. We're going to see these EMPs just ripple across this whole army. This is beautiful. Bam, bam, bam. And then the stim happens. That's great. Okay, and we're going to see some nice little control here, advancing forward, target firing this Colossus, and it's done, right? And this Viking helps a lot because it has 9 range. That's so much range. That is so huge. And nothing else really seems to be doing that much damage. I feel like Storm would have been great here. I think that's something that I would consider in future games. But from then on out, look at this. Pretty much just cleanup. Right, taking out this expansion, we have some more Marines and Marauders being made here. Let's actually slow down in the midst of everything. Still making everything very well timed out of this. You know, messing up a little bit. At 118 of 150 food, the money's getting a little high, but still being pretty damn good about building everything. And no new upgrades coming up, so that's something that I might want to consider in a future game. Sort of working on that if I were the Terran player. But for the most part, Terran's pretty much done, right? He did it. So he's going to pull back here, he's going to regroup, and then he's going to kill this off. I'm not so sure I like pulling back that far, but of course that might be having to do some with my inexperience. He probably scanned this, saw all these Colossi, and was like, yeah, I'm really going to need reinforcements. But again, watch how good these Vikings are. Look, already almost done with shield, about half done. The range is absurd on these Vikings. This is so good. And of course, EMPs, killing everything. EMP then stim. I like that a lot. That's something I'm aware of that I want to try. And then look, dashing up, target firing the Colossi, and then just, you know, winning the game. Wasn't that cool? Wasn't that just great? And that's one thing that I love so much about this, is that it's a very clearly solid unit combination, kind of like, you know, Medic Marine Science Vessel in Starcraft 1. I love that. I think that's awesome. Ooh, I'm into it. And here we have Medevac Marine Marauder Ghost, but primarily Marine Marauder Ghost. Just a few Vikings for support, just 3 at the end of the game, and just 1 Medevac with each push, but really nicely timed push, and very clearly able to defend against everything early. Got the Ghost, dealt with those Dark Templar, expanded early on, wasn't going too out of control by getting reactors too early on. And then by the time he got his econ running, all those barracks had reactors or tech labs and were pooping out as many units as he could possibly, you know, spam away with. So I like that quite a bit. I think that showed real great, solid play. And I think this is the other game I wanted to look at was against Bomb. I just want to briefly check. No, it was against Chthon Luck, that's right. And if any of you didn't already know this, Louder, who we just looked at last game, was the WCG 2009 USA representative at the Grand Final. He did great in WCG USA and attended the Grand Final. And here we have Chthon Luck, who's a phenomenal Warcraft 3 player. I know, for instance, when I was playing Warcraft 3, way back when I was in high school, before I could grow my immense beards, I played a lot with Chthon Luck on the Warcraft 3 ladders, and he always managed to consistently stay in the top 20 of the ladder. Actually, after this, one thing I want to do is go look up if you ever played in any big tournaments, because that's something I don't actually know. I've always wanted to know a little bit more about the Warcraft 3 pro scene. But anyways, continuing right along, so we have Chthon Luck spawning as Deserg pieces. So we have CowGoMoo doing the good old delayed good luck, have fun. You know, just sort of a funny story, like when I used to play, like when I first started out, you know, back when I played with just the mouse and everything, I always wanted to be as kind as possible to everyone. I didn't want to step on any toes, and I wanted to make certain the person I played with was a friend. by the time we got the match underway. So at the start of every game, I'd always before I even split my workers, I would say, "Hey man, where are you from?" And then I'd box my workers, and then I'd send him, and he'd be like, France or just something, and I'd be like, "Cool man, hey, best of luck." I didn't say good luck, I said best of luck, man. Have fun. And this is way back when I was actually in like 7th, 8th grade, like the first time I've ever actually gotten on BattleNet. And I distinctly remember I got on my first game. It was a 3-player free-for-all, 3-player 1v1v1, and 2 of the players allied against me, and they killed me, and I almost threw up. Right? It hurt so bad, just like my stomach sunk, and I was like, oh my god, the inhumanity. They allied against me, and they Zergling rushed me. They 4-pooled way back when spawning pools only cost 150. It was just so cruel. And after that, I was like, I'm going to make certain I'm never going to be that bad manner. So, of course, I'd waste time not splitting my workers, and I'd screw up a lot at the beginning. So, it's good to have manner. It's good to say good luck, have fun. But make sure you never are so manner that you end up playing like pretty horribly. So we're going to see some awesome stuff happen, once again, from CowGoMoo. Oh, but it's a completely different strategy and a completely different matchup. Sending the scouting SCV, I'm curious what he's going to be looking for. And you know what? I have a pretty good idea. Look at the timing of this Scout SCV. It just got to Cthon Luck's base, and as we can see by the Queen timing, the spawning pool didn't start that long ago. So I would bet you that this Terran player is looking for a Roach Warren. Notice that when he scouted, he first skirted this outside edge, and then he's coming up here. He's constantly going to be circling to check out if there's going to be any roaches. I know that in my Protoss vs. Zerg plays, I've been trying to do that. I actually have not gotten the chance to play as many Terran vs. Zergs as I'd want, but I can already see that the roach openings are fairly significant, so I can understand him trying to scout that. Taking big arcs moving forward and back to make sure that he doesn't loop around, and then when the Zerglings pop out, they get the speed bonus boost and just kill it off instantly. But oh my goodness, what do we have here? A factory is building. So first we had the barracks built right here, and then he lifted it up and floated it back, so now he has a pretty solid wall off right now. So he's pretty safe. He's still trying to scout around, trying to find anything, but he's going to come home because he's weak, he's tired. He's been working really hard. Cthon Luck waits a little bit to make that roach nest. Oh yeah, another very early orbital command. I'm not going to focus too much on the timing of that because we talked quite a bit about it in the previous game. And we have the factory about to finish. Yeah, lifting the barracks off. Actually, what we're going to see here is a very early double Hellion harass. And Hellions are outrageously good against workers. Oh my god, that's actually one of the funniest games I've ever seen, is when CowGoMoo actually just went ahead and dropped a Protoss player early on with Hellions and killed off like every probe. I mean, if you drop vultures in an undefended Protoss base, you might kill something like 10 probes if he's, wasn't looking and hasn't been very careful. I'm going to rewind and talk about this in just a second. Yeah, if he's not careful, he can kill off like 10 probes or something like that, but it'll run him away. But in this game, CowGoMoo killed off like 45 probes. He killed off every probe that this man had ever made. So that gave me a good old hearty raffle. And again, you heard me talk a little bit about that ghost positioning, not having them too clustered. It's that little stuff that really, gets me pumped up. And here's another example of it. See, we have some Zerglings that are just sort of waltzing in. Oh yeah, I can zoom in. Yeah, look at them go. By the way, I always have my graphics on the lowest quality settings because I can see stuff a little better. So here we go. Look, he's coming up the ramp, and ho! Look at that timing. Isn't that amazing? Look, he was watching the mini-map, watching his ramp, making sure that none of that jank could possibly go up his ramp. And then just punishing these Zerglings for having ever been born, and continuing on right away. Ooh, these Hellions move pretty damn fast. And in the meantime, we see Marauders being made. I love this because so many players go for early roaches, so we can do a whole bunch of harassment, keep the roaches back, and then we can get the Marauders in the meantime. So that way when our harassment's finally done, we can deal with any of those pesky roaches that happen. So I want everyone to just think about it. Let's just mull over what just happened. I'm just chewing on CowGoMoo's brilliance right there, right? Because a lot of players, this is what's going to happen. This always happens at the start of every strategy game. They say, what unit am I having trouble with? The roach. Cool. What unit's good against the roach? Oh, a marauder. Alright, am I building marauders? Check. Done. I get Starcraft 2. This game's easy. It's broken. Marauders just rape roaches, It's that extra step that's so important, that really sets the extremely good players apart from the less extremely good players who just somehow got a beta key. And that's this transitioning aspect of, I'm going to open up with Hellions and keep you busy. So I'm doing a ton of damage. And when you come at me eventually, I have units that will allow me to repel you. So in other words, in the first case, if I just make Marauders to deal with your Roaches, it means that I don't die. In this case, going Hellions into Marauders, it means I have a chance to do damage, I am delaying you, and I don't die. Do you see how the two of those both result in you not dying? But in one of them, which is what CowGoMoo's doing, we have the chance to put a ton of pressure on our opponent and kill him early on, or at the very least, mess up his economy. So I'm always looking for cute little ways to get an extra little snazzy jazz going on there. Screw up my opponent just a touch, and see, here are the Roaches, okay. And again, a lot of players who would be Terran, looking back at their own replay at this point, would go, Roaches early, man. I got to make sure I get those Marauders early. But, one Marauder, not going to be able to hold off the Roaches now, but the Hellions are going to do effectively the same thing. You really cannot let these two Roaches move. And, we have some other Roaches here, just checking out to make sure nothing crazy is happening. So then look, the Overlord's here. I assume that CowGoMoo's aware of this Overlord. He has to be able to see it. So then this stuff starts going down. He's killing off the destructible rocks. Oh, God. Well, if we look here, I'm making a drone as Cthulhu. I can't let that happen. I got to move forward with my Roaches. I got to stop that. Herp-de-dur. Look at CowGoMoo going in the base. And this, this is the thing. I'm going to highlight what's happening right now because I'm actually falling into it a little bit myself. When people rewatch games like this, they generally watch the action, they watch the entertaining part, and that would be these Hellions running around and being awesome. And, seeing the Roaches just trying to, chase after it, oh, cool, good job, Blizzard, for making cool little stuff like that. But no one's going to go back and just constantly stare in CowGoMoo's base and see what's going on there, right? That's kind of the important part, right? So, again, just to sort of link it back to what I was saying earlier, players will see Roaches and say, oh, what's good against it? Marauders. Cool. And then they'll just be done with it. Or they'll watch this CowGoMoo game, and they'll go, oh, look, harassment, action going on. I'm going to watch that. And then they'll be done with it. And what a lot of people are going to get out of this game is just that either harassment's cool, or that Hellions, maybe I'll try those early. But what I'm seeing right here is, oh my God, he transitioned from one factory straight into 3 barracks. And look at the transition that we're actually going to see. I'll actually spoil it. CowGoMoo went barracks, then factory. With his barracks, he made a reactor, and then lifted the factory, landed it, and then he's moved the factory away. And then he's going to lift a barracks up and land it, keeping constant efficiency on that reactor. So awesome. So awesome. Yeah, look, dashing in, dashing out, ain't no thing. And the destructible rocks do end up remaining up. So Cthulhu is continuing to macro away. Vomiting continuously on this layer, and only just now does it seem like he's comfortable enough sending guys out to mine from this base. And this is, I think, a very important thing to note. This spine crawler I don't actually think is necessary. Instead of getting a spine crawler, what I would do as Zerg is take these Roaches back and just position them here with these Roaches and just sort of wall myself off from any sort of future harassment. But you can see what the potential advantage of doing this harassment is. We've bought all this time, there have been no workers here, and he builds a seemingly useless spine crawler. I'm not positive that's useless, but it might be a little bit too early. So then transitioning into 3 barracks, getting 2 tech labs up, and getting the very early stim up. So see that early tech lab not only getting us Marauders, but getting a stim for all the other fancy dancy jank we want to be making. Ooh, cool. Looks like we're going to be seeing a nice combination of Marine Marauder coming out early on and a fairly early expansion. Is he being good about muling? Well, it looks like he just got over 50, and I'm just going to keep an eye on that just to see when and where he ends up using that. So then look at this. Look how sweet this is. He pulls the Hellions back, and then he can make this awesome little push here. So sweet. Chasing everything down, and this, I think, is going to become a pretty important abuse of Hellions that people are going to see over time. If you have a few Hellions plus an attack, the Hellions can chase the things running away, and if the things running away ever turn around, the rest of the army will catch up and kill it. So, of course, we see that in Starcraft 1, but it happens here in Starcraft 2, and it's still cool. And the money's just now getting over 125. Again, there's a battle going on over here. I don't really care about that. I want to make sure he's macroing well. Uh-oh, it looks like he may have forgotten the depot. No, he's getting a missile turret. Is he getting +1? Oh, no, he's not. Huh. Was this second barracks really necessary early on? That's what I'm starting to wonder. I don't know. I mean, CowGoMoo might look at this game and be like, yeah, I screwed stuff up. You know, I'm at 82. I could have muled earlier and had enough money to support this barracks. But that's the sort of thing that I want to be really critical of. I mean, this push obviously is great, as we're going to see right here, you know. Let's actually slow it down a little bit, you know. This, very clearly not bad. Look, stimming, pulling back, nice little pullback, just bouncing back just a little bit to get back with his other reinforcements, but back home, ooh, the macros slipped just a little bit. Uh-oh, you know. Sort of things I would think of. And I'm saying this, uh-oh, not to be like, oh, look, CowGoMoo, he doesn't know what he's doing, you know. Instead, it's to say something like, did CowGoMoo need that extra barracks? Maybe he didn't. That's the sort of thing that's really important to consider. Because that way, then, again, remember how at the start I was saying if you macro well, you'll see other things? If you macro really well out of these two barracks, you might go, Jesus, I couldn't have even supported this barracks in the first place. I could have gotten this command center earlier, I could have gotten more money earlier, and all this stuff, and still had this extremely successful attack right here. And the spine crawlers, which I said were seemingly useless because they look like they're positioned to deal with Hellion harass, they end up turning out to not be so useless because they save the Zerg. Coming up here to kill this off. You know, a lot of players here would say, why doesn't he run up the ramp? And the answer to that is he could, but anytime you run up the ramp, you run the risk of losing all these guys. What I should say is, when you run up the ramp, you're pretty much saying, I'm going to lose these guys for something that's worth it. But you still have the opportunity to pull back if you hit this closer expansion. And, you know, some target firing mishaps went on there. But let's rewind it just a pinch. So I'm going to go back to the Terran base. Look, he's lifting, he's remacroing again. Is he researching anything? No. Is he getting his +1? We have a turret here early. That's great, you know, because I'm certain that in CowGoMoo's practice, when he did this push at around this time, he suffered from some sort of Mutalisk attack or something like that. Still getting a lot of Marauders. Oodles and oodles of Marauders. And look at this nice timing. Just queuing something a few inches before it finished. Or should I say millimeters on the Starcraft stream. And look, these are going to finish and... Oh, I was hoping you would macro out of them right away. Alas. Excuse me. Yeah, and then getting that +1 upgrade, and then we're going to see him muling, hopefully soon. I think it's very difficult to remember to mule. It takes me quite some time. I think this is a reasonable choice as well to get this bunker. Oh, look, some changelings. This is so cool. Killing them off. I actually didn't know changelings existed, and I almost flipped out in a game. I was like, what the hell? It won't let me grab a zealot. Oh, and by the way, I just want to say, I've been doing a lot of my own games as Protoss. And I want everyone to know I actually play random in StarCraft 2, but I have rolled Protoss in like 85% of my games. Like, in all the latter games I've played, only once have I not gotten Protoss. So, I don't know. Getting a lot of experience with Protoss. That's why we're taking the opportunity to look at some Terran stuff today. And look, suddenly making a ton of Marines out of all his barracks. I bet this is something that a lot of players are simply not going to consider at all. Making barracks out of making Marines out of a barracks with a tech lab. And we're going to see the loudest turret in the world. I swear, every time a turret fires on my computer, it freaks me out. And see, we have this Marine coming down here, and I don't know how long it's going to take him to spot this, but I think this is a very cool mechanic. But anyways, Zerg's kind of, you know, hanging back and everything. He's getting some Evo chambers, he's getting an infestation pit for teching. A question I have is this too much too early? I mean, we got the Hydra Den, and then we're getting double upgrades, and we're getting an infestation pit, and we have 2 queens, or we used to have 2 queens, now we just have 1 queen, you know, but we still only have 2 bases. Do we want to be expanding at any point, or is this what we want? I actually don't know. Part of me is I would actually say incorrectly biased by my experience in StarCraft 1, where I'm being like, well, Zerg in StarCraft 1 would have expanded here long ago. But of course, this isn't StarCraft 1. That's something I need to be super, super, super aware of, is whether or not that's good or bad. I'm getting a very early armory. Let's see what is coming out of this. It might be upgrades or something, or it might be a nuke, which would be so cool. But we'll go ahead and talk about this in a little bit. Beyond that, everything's, you know, pretty normal. We have a supply depot for spotters here. We have some SCVs poking out around here. Oh, that's a changeling. I think I would have been a little bit more proactive about scouting, in particular the expansions, because as we'll actually note, no one scouted this yet, no one scouted this, no one scouted here, and no one scouted here, and a lot of people are just like, but this, it's so vulnerable, why would anyone expand there? People will always expand there. I'm not gonna lie, people just love expanding there. Oh, and this is like, I think my favorite part of the whole game, okay? I'm going to recite how many building switches there were with all these tech labs and these reactors. Just now, this starport has stolen this old barracks reactor. And also even note how good this base organization is. This is so cool. So, to do the history, barracks was built here. A factory was then built here. The barracks lifted here, landed, built a reactor, such that when the barracks finished the reactor, the factory also finished. The factory lifted, landed, and did some Hellion harass. In the meanwhile, this barracks, which is actually the first barracks CowGoMoo ever built, he got the tech lab early on, so that way he could get very fast marauders to help defend with any sort of roach, and as we saw, to eventually do another push. He then lifted this factory and moved it, and had another barracks land here. And his third barracks built another tech lab. And now that he's gotten this starport, he lifted that third tech lab barracks, landed it here, is getting a reactor with it, and is giving the tech lab to the starport. That is so kick-ass. I love that. And getting the tech lab here to get that Hellion upgrade, the Infernal Pre-Igniter. And look, that early tech rab, that tech rab steal from the barracks of CowGoMoo is letting him get that very, very early Raven, which detects, which is super important in this matchup, thanks to burrowed units. And we're going back to getting all these Marines. And I don't know if anyone saw that when I clicked on it, but this combat shield upgrade only just finished. And look at the great timing of all this. Look at how all this is lining up so fancily. We're going to see this starport with this Raven. This Raven's going to pop out. It's going to be moving out pretty soon here. And I hope I just saw what I think I saw. Did he just... Yeah, it looks like he is currently salvaging the bunker. Bam! Getting a little bit of extra cash. Super good to do. And now getting a whole bunch of Hellions. So it looks like he's going for a Hellion Marine Marauder army along with a Raven. What's cool about this is a lot of people will look at this and they'll go, oh, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, we've just hit 1,500 viewers. And there's two things awesome about that. First off, 1,500 viewers. Getting it done. There we go. Getting it done. Second of all, the stream hasn't crashed yet, so that I'm delighted to hear that Livestream has been helping out with everything, because they told me to install this new version of Procaster, and it's working out great. But anyways, a lot of people will look at this, and they'll see this game and the other louder game, and they'll go, well, in these two games, you just want bio. Terran's dumb. All you do is go bio. But these are completely different. It is not that he is making infantry that is the important thing to note. It's all the transitions he did around it. It's all the little slight minor touches that we're seeing. So for instance, in the louder game, sure there was a Marine Marauder army, but there were not that many Marauders and there were a lot more Marines. The composition was way more skewed towards Marines. And it was a medevac and Vikings and Ghosts with a little bit of extra, I guess, spice thrown in there. But here we have Hellions being thrown in there with Ravens. That's the extra spice here. And there's actually much more Marauders. Look, there's almost a full 10 Marauders. Or should I just say 9? I don't know why. I'm just like, upwards of 9 Marauders. I'm like rounding it to 10 to try to sound cool. But of course, Day 9 would not like to deceive people. And Day 9 also likes speaking in the third person. And look, all these extra Hellions here. And these Hellions, I do want to call it like a spice unit, just something that was thrown in there, because these two factories really have not been in existence for a very long time. And this timing push, I'm really curious to see how far along. He almost has +2 attack upgrade. Again, part of the reason why I think he got this early armory. And as we're going to see, it looks like this +2 is going to come into play right as he's getting to the Zerg's base. I haven't really looked at the Zerg's base because, again, I want the focus to be on CowGoMoo, but basically Zerg's been making a lot of roaches. Is just now getting the hive. And what upgrade levels are these? This is just level 1. I've actually seen that these evolution chambers were up for a much longer time, and I'm wondering why they only started upgrading just now. But then there's the Ultralisk Cavern. As you'll note, Ultralisks are good. So look, busting this down, no problem. And I think we're going to see these Medic Marine get this upgrade. Not quite yet. So if I were Terran in this game, one of the things I would want to work on next is trying to make sure I could get that infantry upgrade right on time. And look at these Hellions running in here, killing the shit out of everything. Look how fast they kill workers. Jeez. And this is what's kind of cool about the Hellions as a unit for part of your force, is that you can run in, do stuff with them, and pull them right back. They're very versatile. So I hope everyone just saw that. I actually regret not having it on ultra slow. Alright, so I rewound it too much, but I can rewind, so that's pretty sweet. So we see CowGoMoo coming in here. Go, CowGoMoo! Coming in, he's going to do the harassment. He's going to poke in there. He's going to... Alright, so here we go. Burrowing under here. Looks like that Raven was a little too high. I'd want to make sure that Raven is properly positioned. But look at this. So he's pulling everything back. So first he pulls everything back. And because it's so easy to group everything into one attack force, I mean, as we see, we actually do have everything in one attack group. A lot of people are just going to be like, oh, hey, control group 1, click here. But we're going to see some nice little subtle things happen right here. This is the thing I was like, I hope everyone sees this. Look at this. These units are staying still. The units in the front are pulling to the left. The units from behind are pulling to the left, making a really big concave. Or at least that is the goal. And look! Yeah, and look, pulling this left side back to get a nice big concave. Trying to burrow the roaches because they have their ultra super healing underground, but moving a little bit slowly, so falling pretty quickly. Wasn't that cool seeing that concave get built? Look at that, nice solid fundamental thing. Again, we're not seeing outrageous micro tricks, that people like to claim that, oh, Starcraft 1, you need to know every little cutesy micro trick in the book. In big battles, in Starcraft 1, there are not actually that many super suave, ultra subtle movements with micro. Normally you see those in the early game or in specific circumstances, like with Mutalisk Harass. But it's these big strokes, like, for instance, as I'm seeing these units come up here as Terran, I want to select probably right about like these units and send them here, and then grab these units and pick them up. So that way I have this big arc. And these units I never even really touch. That's just a big, broad stroke for unit control that a lot of people overlook. So at this point, I would partly argue it doesn't matter that CowGoMoo isn't microing here. But it's still important how long it took him to do that. And see, notice, right here, there was even a little bit of an arc with those roaches. They were doing a lot of damage. And only now is CowGoMoo pulling stuff back. That is fancy. And look, coming up here, one Raven up here. Oh, Ultralisk. Oh no, the danger unit. Okay, look. Target firing the Ultralisk, one Ultra down. Target firing the second Ultralisk, and second Ultralisk down. And notice this was as slow as the replay lets me go. So the Marauders really killed that fast. And the question is, what was going on not in this battle? Terran seemed to have been making some stuff. His army's still pretty small. Would have liked to see slightly better macro, probably a second engineering bay to get that extra upgrade. We have a command center here that's been there for quite some time. So, and the whole point of all that is you can be this good. You can be as good as CowGoMoo and have a 90% win rate and still have stuff that you want to look at and work on. And there was just so much solid stuff that CowGoMoo was doing, and all sorts of brilliance going on with this lifting and landing, and Cthulhu luck, of course, as well. Mandarin says, nice timing. I was too slow transitioning to Ultra by a minute or so, which is actually a really interesting proposition, because those Ultras, I don't even know if, yeah, they didn't have the +2 armor, so that may have helped quite a bit. So with that, we're going to go ahead and just open it up to some questions. We've been going for 53 minutes and 33 seconds, so what I am going to do is just take 2, 3, 4, 5, upwards of 6 questions, and just go ahead and continue. So someone is asking me to shave. I promise I will. You and my girlfriend both want me to, because then I'm a very, very prickly bear. So I'm just going to go ahead and wait for these to trickle up, and just once again point out that even though we saw Bio, we saw Marine Marauder in both of these games, they were so different. The openings were different, how he transitioned to him was different, the composition of it was different, when and how he chose to attack was different, the upgrades he was getting was different, everything was just so different. Except for the fact that one could say, it looks like there is some of the similar units here. So make sure you're trying to focus on all those little subtleties while I look at all this other jank. So people are currently in here asking questions. Let's see. Let's go to the very first one. So let's see here. Caleb says, if you have some difficulty with macro when you go Marine Marauder, is it viable to do some bunker use for the over minerals and then salvage them when you don't need them anymore? That's pretty interesting. I mean, part of what I want to say is learn a macro better, you know? I think it's better not to build the bunker. Part of the reason why I don't like the idea of building the bunker specifically is because it's a very strong defensive structure, so you might delude yourself into saying, oh yeah, I'm super safe with this build. And then as you continue practicing, you get really good and say, oh, that bunker, I'm macroing now, I don't need it. And suddenly it turns out you need it, you know, and you don't really want to be in that situation. So what I would probably say is that if your minerals are getting higher, just build the extra barracks. So what'll happen is you will have an exact version of what you wanted to do that's a little bit weaker. So in other words, if you're macroing really well, let's say you have 3 barracks constantly producing Marine Marauder and a big army. If you were doing bad macro, you should just get 4 barracks and go Marine Marauder and still get that exact same sized big army, except it's going to be a little bit delayed because of that extra barracks, or a slightly smaller army so you can get the attack on time. And I think that that's very useful because it lets you see your build as the build. You're not doing any big changes to it. You're not getting any extra defense or any extra offense. You're getting actually everything exactly the same minus the cost of building that extra barracks. So I think that that is what I would actually recommend doing instead of that other thing. But what I like about Caleb's statement is that really spend your money, right? If you're having trouble macroing because your money's getting high, you should just spend the money. You shouldn't think of any reason to keep the money lying around. Like, well, in this matchup, you don't really need to spend blah, blah. Just spend the money. Just figure out a way to spend the friggin' money. So, Terran says, in Game 1, it seemed like Louder couldn't make up his mind with the build he was going to do. 4 gates, Dark Templar Rush, Fast Robo, Quick Early Expand. It seemed like his indecisiveness was what lost him the game. Would you agree? Like, for instance, the Colossus had come out 5 minutes earlier. So I'm going to answer that first question, Terran. And he has 2 questions, but I'll just save it one for now because I really like this first question quite a bit, and I will continue to blab on about it. So I don't know so much if I would label it as indecisive. I don't know if I would even call Louder a very indecisive person when playing StarCraft. I think it's that it's hard to know how much money you have. So probably in Louder's mind, he had some idea of, okay, I want to get a lot of gateway units, and warp gates are good, and I want to get some Immortals and some Colossus. So that's just his basic plan. So he wants to open Dark Templar. Those are probably his desires, you know. So then, right after that, it's really easy to have every component of your build in your head, and you just start doing them one at a time. So, for instance, you know, it's very easy in Louder Spot to be like, okay, let's build the expansion. Okay, let's get those gateways up. Let's get that Robo Bay up. And then all of a sudden you have all the things that you need and no units, and you're super vulnerable, you know. So, for instance, I'll take Zerg's Terran as the example. I know I want a hive, I know I want expansion and 5 hatches, I need lurkers, I need the evolution chamber for the +1 carapace. How does that look? I'm going to open up 3 hatch, I'm going to go Mutalisk Zergling, I'm going to wait a bit, and I'm going to get the hatch at my expansion. As I'm harassing him with Mutalisk, I'm going to be waiting a little bit, and then I'm going to get my Hydralisk Den for the lurkers. I'm going to wait a little bit, and then I'm going to get the evolution chamber for the +1, and then I'm going to wait a little bit, I'm going to get the Queen's Nest, and as I'm waiting a little bit more, I finally make my 5th hatchery. There's a lot of periods of just sort of, you know, holding off on stuff and not doing anything in particular. So I think if I were in Louder's position, what I would say is, okay, so the Robo Bay, the expansion, and the 4 gateways seemed to be the big 3 things I did after that Dark Templar opening. How do I reorder those? Maybe I expand after the 2 gates and then get the robotics facility to scout, and then once I'm getting enough money, I can add on a 3rd and 4th warp gate. Or maybe I just want to go 4 warp gates and put pressure on him, and then get the expansion up. Maybe I just want to get the robotics facility right away because I think Immortals are sweet, and I'll just worry until I have enough money, and then I'll expand then. Again, just rearrangements of those big three pieces and figuring it out. I do think that it was part of the reason why Louder was so weak in that mid-game, so that's what I would mention. So Rand says, in the second game, CowGoMoo didn't get to scout the Roach Warren and went for Hellions Marauder. How do you think this opening does against other Zerg openings, like Mutalisks, for example? And what do you think of the early Hellions? They didn't seem very useful. So there's this concept I refer to as forcing, which doesn't mean that you make your opponent do something. It more so means if your opponent had done anything else, you win. So, very easy example in Starcraft 1. Terran player wants to go early expand on 14 Command Center before the barracks, like super early Command Center. If a Zerg player 9 pools, the vocabulary I would use is that forces the opponent not to go 14 Command Center. It doesn't mean that he's going to scout your 9 pool and then say, let me go back in the past and then decide not to early expand, because he can't scout you fast enough. Instead, what it means is that you just kill it outright. So I did that example because here I think the Hellion opening forces the opponent not to do a lot of early Zergling openings. If my Zerg opponent did rely on a whole bunch of Zerglings for defense early, the Hellions are going to rip through those Zerglings really quickly, just because they do so much damage to light units. And then the Hellions are going to wreak havoc all over my base. I could get the Spine Crawlers up early, and that's something that I would want to practice as a Zerg player, is getting those positioned properly. The only other way to hold it off is to get Roaches. So in other words, it seems to force my opponent to go Roaches, or to force him to have some sort of very clever early defense, which of course results in the Zerg being very, very low on money early on. I like the fact that those Hellions close down all the options. So the question is, why are we seeing Marauders then? Because really, I'm only up against two possibilities. Roaches, or that guy who defended early on with defense, with those Spine Crawlers. In both of those cases, the Marauders are a great choice, right? Because they help deal with the Roaches very well, and they're a pretty damn good unit anyways, so you can get an expansion up pretty quickly. So that's a great transition. I love that opening. I thought it was so smart. And, you know, someone might say, but Marauders aren't really very good against Zerglings. And it's like, but he was forced not to have gone Zerglings in the first place because the Hellions were so awesome against it. So that is what I would say is really awesome about that opening. So, Jan says, what do you think about StarCraft 2 as a spectator point of view? Do you think the new graphics have a positive or negative change on StarCraft, third-party spectating? I would answer that real fast, just because I want to stick to the game. So what I would say to that is, I prefer the lower graphic settings because, actually, a very kind user on Team Liquid sent me some articles, some scientific articles that demonstrated that if you give two people some tasks, and you give some people the very bare bones, non-visually explosive, just not too much visual noise version, and then you gave someone the really pimped out, beautiful, artful version of whatever it was they were testing, the people who had the simpler one that had less visual information to process performed a little bit better. I don't think it was phenomenally better, but I think it was a little bit better. So what I love about StarCraft 2 is that the players can set their graphic settings to low, and the spectators can set the graphic settings to high. And that way they can, you know, really, really see what's going on. But I don't know if people will end up using that. So, yeah, that's what I have to say about that. It might end up being the case that people just go ahead and say, yeah, you know what, it's too hard to tell, so let's stick to the low. So, let's see here. Oh yeah, this is a great question. So, Izin says, do you feel Marauders kill Ultralists too fast given the cost? It's a little bit hard to tell right now because I haven't really been in a lot of situations where the Ultralisks both have the speed and the armor upgrade, which I think are super important. Because think back to StarCraft 1, if you have Ultralisks without the armor upgrade, Medic Marine kill it like immediately, it's not even close. And also, even with the armor upgrades, a lot of tanks murder a lot of Ultralisks really badly. Even pretty much mech murders Ultralisks really, really well. So I'm pretty comfortable with it. What I might even say is you shouldn't be going Ultralisk late game as Zerg against Terran. That might be the solution. Just because Unit A struggles against Unit B, it doesn't mean that B is overpowered in any regard, I think. So let's just go ahead and take one more question. question. People asking a lot about my facial hair. Yes, basically I plug my nose and I blow really hard and the hair just forces itself out. So I'll take this one last question by Adam Omega. Did you notice that the early harass with the Hellions may have been intentional at the rocks to get a quicker entry on the push? Ooh, I think that's really clever. So what Adam Omega is implying here is that way back in this game, I'll actually come back over here. Let's actually go to the Terran's base, to these rocks. So the Hellions came early and were killing off the opponent's rocks, and then they had to pull back. And Adam Omega is saying, well, do you think he was doing this early on to weaken this? Because what we did see is that Terran eventually busted down this front. Could that have been an intentional component? I would lean towards no in this case, just because I don't recall it doing particularly that much damage. But I love that kind of thinking, because this is really what I'm hearing. If I do early aggression, perhaps I should try to kill off these destructible rocks to create another early entry point. I can put so much pressure on my opponent as the early aggressor if I do that, and I wholeheartedly agree. So that might actually be a very clever thing to do. That actually gives me a whole bunch of ideas I want to try out, where I might push against my opponent early on and just be constantly taking a few hits at the destructible rocks as I'm getting there to open it up a lot earlier than I'd normally be able to. In particular, maybe that first early Marine Marauder push might have been strengthened just by going straight for the destructible rocks and busting them down. I'm not too sure. But again, it's something to test. So you know what? I am going to unmute the moderator chat, and I want to say that with 1,200 viewers left in the stream, go to GoSuGamers.net and vote for me as the Community Award for 2009, because I'm super excited to possibly win the internet. So if you could just help me win the whole internet by voting for me, that would be amazing. Once again, it's on GoSuGamers.net, or maybe it's GoSuGamers.com. I actually always type in GoSuGamers.net, I'm pretty certain, but you should all go there and vote for me. So yeah, you should vote for Day 9. My brother's also on there, as is Artosis, John747, who hosts the VODs for everyone for the Korean Pro matches, and Team Liquid, which of course hosted the recent Team Liquid Star League. They're all really good, but vote for me! So yeah, that's going to go ahead and wrap it up, and I'm going to head out. So hey everyone, thank you so much. I am done for the day. See ya!